Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, blessed as usual to be joined by my dear friend Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News, and he joins us every week to help us look at church news and current events in light of church teaching. Matthew, brother, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. And in fact, I want to begin by saying, aren't we joyous that we get to open with some magnificent news?
It is always a good thing when we have happy news to report. In this case, it's somebody who is obviously very closely connected with Mother Angelica. And the person we're talking about, of course, is servant of God, Rhoda Wise, who her cause opened a number of years ago. And the Diocese, I think, of Youngstown has reported that the canonization cause for her has now moved sort of out of the diocesan phase into the Roman phase with the submission of the formal documents on her life, her proposed heroic virtues. They were submitted to the Vatican Dicastery of the Causes of Saints. That document, we can talk more about that in a second, is called Appositio, and it's a huge step for any cause to be able to move to the Rome side.
And huge move is true. And as it's moving, we can also therefore testify to the fact that she's already proven to be quite the intercessor.
Well, I mean, one of the things that is very clear in her lifetime is that she was closely associated with a number of miraculous healings. Her house where she lived had long been a place of pilgrimage, of people coming to her house. People, even when she was alive, people came to her for spiritual advice. So this was an extraordinary woman, a convert. We always take great joy in the lives of converts. And in her case, the way that this always works for a cause is that once it's open, you have the title of servant of God, which she's had for a while you have, on the diocesan side, several commissions. So you have the theological commission and a historical commission, and they go through pretty much the entire life of the candidate. And that matters because obviously you need to look at everything that we have as a historical record of what they've written, as well as the reputation, and placing them within the proper historical context. Now, one of the things that that entails too is making a very sober assessment about the influence, the lasting legacy of faith and holiness that a candidate left behind. And I don't think there's any question that Rhoda Wise left behind a tremendous legacy that continues even today. And of course, there is her remarkable connection with Mother Angelica as a kind of mentor to her, but also somebody who helped her very much on her way to the extraordinary life that Mother Angelica went on.
This close friendship, like you rightly mentioned, Mother Angelica was also affiliated with what we can rightly call a miraculous, unexplained healing of Mother Angelica.
Yeah, that's right. So Mother Angelica had a stomach ailment, and with that beautiful friendship that she has, and that healing of Mother Angelica, I think, was pivotal in that development of Mother Angelica. As I was saying, I'll just keep using that word, extraordinary relationship that the two of them had.
Mm-hmm.
And those types of spiritual friendships that we see in the lives of Catholics, in the lives of remarkable men and women of the faith, those are the things too that are taken into account. And you go back to 1943, this 19-year-old girl named Rita Rizzo, who of course would go on to become Mother Angelica, had been suffering for months from severe stomach pains related to various issues. And Wise spoke with Rita Rizzo's mother and gave Rita these prayers to the little flower to say in a novena, to make promises to spread the devotion of Saint Therese of Lisieux. And after the novena's 9 days, Rita Rizzo suffered severe pains and experienced what she always believed to be a miraculous healing. And this is one of those moments, I think, and Mother Angelica talked about it, that this moment was really pivotal. She talked about it over the years, that the Lord came in, she said, and healed me through the little flower, and I had a whole different attitude. And of course, she went on to visit Wise's home on a regular basis and talk to her about the religious life that she felt. And so that spiritual mentorship was absolutely crucial in the life of Mother Angelica, but it's also just one of many stories that are associated with the Road of Wise.
To also continue in a similar vein of happy news, Diocese of Oslo and Sigrid Undset.
That's right. This is, it may not be a name that's known to a lot of people, but it should be. You know, Sigrid Undset is one of those great writers in modern Catholicism, or what passes as sort of modern Catholicism. And she was a Nobel laureate. And I guess the best way to put it is she is a genuine literary phenomenon in her life. And so Bishop Frederick Hansen of Oslo in Norway announced that the canonization cause for her has been opened. And it comes at a time when we are seeing a massive rise in Catholic conversions in Norway. I've seen numbers that are kind of astounding, that it has gone like in 20 some years from like 15,000 Catholics to 180,000 Catholics, and just continuing to grow. And so from that standpoint, I think the start of this great cause for canonization is a timely one. And Sigrid Undset, much like Rhoda Wise, at the age of 42, became a Catholic in 1924. And let's go back in time to that period when the vast majority of people in Norway were Lutherans. So she became a lay Dominican and talked and wrote about her conversion. And obviously that created some problems for her. But she went on. It didn't seem to impede her career, because just about 4 years later, she won the Nobel Prize in Literature for her magnificent work, Kristin Lavransdatter, which is this grand historical trilogy of medieval Scandinavia. And I think those are perfect demonstrations of the importance of a Catholic worldview in our writing, given the way that she addresses themes like sin and grace and suffering.
And one can only look at her life and realize just how Augustinian her thought process was. And frankly, if we're being honest, just how Augustinian her life was. We've got about a minute left, Matthew. So just very, very quickly, in terms of supporting the causes.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we continue to pray for that God's will be done with these causes. I think in the case of Rhoda Wise, she is extremely well known, and it's an opportunity for us to explore the life of a convert, of somebody who was clearly a mystic, who was a stigmatist, but who also helped bring people to the faith. And in that standpoint, she is a great role model for us at a time when so many people are searching. And in the case of Sigrid Undset, the best way to put it is the way that various people have expressed it, that her life and work have much to offer both the church in Norway and the universal church. And I think that speaks a lot. And we are seeing the church truly universal. And somebody like Sigrid Undset is a perfect example of a genius at work who's drawn to the faith.
I'm talking with Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President, Editorial Director of EWTN News. Continuing on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter. Welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, talking with Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News. We're talking about church news, current events in light of church teaching. So, Matthew, to move on from the joyous news of two causes of canonization, or at least moving on the steps for Rhoda Wise, let's talk about what's going on with the reforms of the Diocese of Rome.
Yeah, this is a story that really escaped a lot of notice, in part because when you first read like a headline that says Pope Leo continues reform of the Diocese of Rome, okay, you think, well, that's nice. But in many ways, this is a very important moment. Let's remember and state the obvious. Pope Leo is Bishop of Rome, which means that he is, in fact, the head of the Universal Church, but he's also the Bishop of Rome. So in other words, there is the Diocese of Rome that is under his care. And typically, obviously, the Pope can't spend all of his days just heading the Diocese of Rome. So in that sense, he has a large support structure. And it is commonly accepted that he has a representative, in this case, the vicar for the Diocese of Rome. And that is Cardinal Baldassare Reina. And Pope Francis, the best way to put it is, was not particularly happy with the administration of Rome, of the diocese itself. So he took it apart in many ways, and made a number of reforms. And Pope Leo coming in has sort of rolled back some of those changes. And it's notable for two reasons. One, it's a kind of a restoration of the autonomy of the leaders of the diocese that really had been stripped of much of their autonomy under Pope Francis, who had really taken the centralization into his hands at the Vatican. And so why does that matter? Well, it matters because Pope Leo has been very innovative in not just re-centralizing some of it, but also establishing what's called a moderator of the curia for the Diocese of Rome. So in other words, it's somebody who can help with the administration. So as a good canonist, he's coming in and looking at structures of what will provide good government. And so he named a priest from Rome, Father Pierluigi Stolfi. But the most important part is that it tells us a little bit about Leo's methods, his style, because he came in, issued a few decrees right after his election that fixed some of the canonical issues that had emerged. Then he listened, he formed a commission, he weighed all the different options, and now he's acting. So it's a microcosm in a way of how he is serving as head of the church, and of course, obviously, as head of the Bishop of Rome. So it's a key insight into how he's governing.
I love that you brought up his canonical expertise, because as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that he's not only bringing to bear here his very clearly systematic mind, well-trained systematic Augustinian canonist mind, he also has administrative experience in the Augustinian community. And so he's bringing all of those experiences to bear very carefully and articulately.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And it's a demonstration, too, of how he listens. He listened to some of the problems that were in place that needed to be fixed, and then made a very careful assessment, judged, and then acted. But he did so in a way that not just re-centralizes. He didn't just restore the way that the diocese had been in a number of years ago. He actually is trying to improve the government of it. And that's why this appointment of this moderator, this figure, who's named for a 5-year renewable term, he sees the duties, oversees the diocesan staff and other things. So he's actually helping the vicar of Rome to do his job, which in the whole point of that is to help the Pope do his job. So he's not afraid to restructure, but it's very clear he puts a great deal of thought into this. There's nothing particularly impetuous about these decisions that he's making, which can be sometimes misinterpreted that he's overthinking things or he's being too deliberate. But clearly, his leadership style is one of that listening and then acting, but acting with prudence.
Lest we think that Leo is contriving offices in a novel way. He is appealing to pre-existing, or at least structures that have been spoken of before. They exist in church law, the moderator of the curia, for example.
Yeah, that's right. So again, there's he's building off of what are generally recognized and workable and time-proven ecclesiastical positions, administrative offices. And from that standpoint, too, we can look at his choice of this person. That's why it's a name that most people have never heard of and probably will never hear of again. That's Father Pier Luigi Stolfi. But this is interesting because he's 55, so he's very young, but he's also held a variety of positions already in the Diocese of Rome. He's been a vice rector of minor and major seminaries. He has been director of the Office of Religious Buildings, head of the section for sacred art and cultural heritage. Now, you can imagine the task of being in charge of the section for sacred art and cultural heritage in Rome. I mean, the heritage of art and culture in Rome is just mind-blowing. And then, rather than simply promoting an administrator, paper pusher, so to speak, he also has pastoral experience. So he was the pastor of a parish in the western part of the city and had been for a number of years. So again, this is somebody who's very seasoned. And we see that too in a lot of the episcopal appointments that Pope Leo's been making, that he wants tried, reliable administrators who are also good pastors. And I think we're really starting to see his influence on episcopal appointments as we are now seeing his administration of the Diocese of Rome.
To switch gears for a final piece of news pertaining to some of Archbishop Ganswain's recent statements about the traditional Latin Mass.
Yeah, well, the Archbishop Ganswein had obviously over the years has had much to say in terms of the traditional Latin Mass and his concerns about where all of that headed. He was positioned in particular because of his longstanding service with Pope Benedict XVI and obviously Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger. But he's also making the similar proposal that we're seeing from a number of other bishops, that in the wake of the SSPX consecrations that are illicit, they are now in schism. We're seeing a call for the lifting of the restrictions that were imposed back in 2021 by Pope Francis under Traditionis Custodes. And I think that's a call that we're starting to see a lot more of as the solution to the reality of the fascination and desire on the part of a lot of Catholics for the traditional Latin Mass, but they obviously want to attend the Mass as Catholics, not as schismatics.
Mm-hmm. And to be very fair pertaining to this issue that we've been covering with the SSPX, very little of the question has to do with the Mass itself and more has to do with authority. So I wonder if you could just round that off very quickly.
Yeah, well, very quickly, what we're seeing obviously is a denial of the authority of the Holy Father, which if you read the decree from the Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith, makes very clear that they are no longer in obedience. They did not adhere to the plea from the Pope. They have severe disagreements with the Second Vatican Council, so they are disagreeing with an ecumenical council in the life of the Church, the 21st Ecumenical Council. So Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, again, said it very aptly. He said, this is not about liturgy. This is about authority in the life of the Church. And it is really for that reason that we are facing the situation that we are with the Society of St. Pius X and its illicit consecrations and the subsequent declaration of being in schism, and for the bishops who took part in it, automatic excommunication.
Matthew, as usual, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. Greatly appreciate this.
Yeah, joy to be with you as always. God bless.
My guest has been Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News. He's been covering church news and current events in light of church teaching, and we've been particularly focused on, in the first segment, on the canonization course for Mother Angelica's spiritual mentor, Rhoda Wise, and the opening of the canonization course for Nobel laureate Sigrid Undset. A lot of hope there. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.